You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, but we've had a lot of fun on the show this year.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this will be our last show for 2019.
Thankfully, only two that were
right. Yeah, that is true. Thankfully, this is only the second time that we'll be discussing a Wilson loss, but since it occurred in the second season, that does mean that the Wilson Bulldogs football team for 2019 has played its last game, and obviously, it's a very disappointing outcome, especially the way it ended against Harrisburg Friday night at Gursky, and we will recap that game. We'll talk about the season and the seniors, and then we'll do a brief look ahead towards 2020 before signing off for probably about 3.5 months. We usually debut a winter show sometime near the end of February, and we'll get started for 2020, but we'll let this one rest. And I know the program will be having their annual banquet in about a month, and there'll be all league and all Berks awards coming out and things like that to still celebrate. And we'll be covering that on the social pages. But tonight on the show, we will talk Harrisburg season and 2020 very briefly.
Sounds good.
All right. I think before we dive in and do our housekeeping, I just want to kind of just say, if you're joining us this evening hoping for us to be upset or mad or angry in any way, you've come to the wrong place. I don't know. I feel like we've been doing this long enough now that you know that we're incredibly positive and optimistic when it comes to everything Wilson football, be it the game, players, coaching, whatever you want to talk about, facilities, administration. Like, we're not here to bash. I mean, we're not.
That would be a quick way for us to not be able to do this anymore.
It's also nothing that we want to do.
No, like, that's not really.
That
doesn't help anything.
We are friends and acquaintances with basically the entire coaching staff, and we have coached or known these players for a long time. So if you think we're going to come on here ever, this has nothing to do with just the end of this season, but in any year past or future, think that we're going to come on here and rip someone's effort or decisions, you are crazy. So please don't bring that stuff here, and don't talk to us about it, because it's not something that we have any interest in talking to. I just saw a lot of comments over the last few days that kind of wanted our opinion on things, and that's not what we're going to do. So don't be incredibly negative about stuff. And thankfully, I didn't actually know the people that it was all random people. Right, I was I don't really even know who you are. So, thankfully it wasn't people that I was you probably shouldn't be asking those questions. It was all people that I was I don't even know who you are. They may not have even been Wilson fans. It's I'm not engaging them anyways. So, moving on to just kind of bring to an end the show, we just want to mention for one last time our show sponsors for the 2019 season, our 5th year Mays Sandwich Shop, Topher's 10th and Elm Cafe, our 2 anonymous donors, and Mr. Andy Herr, who had an incredible write-up after our game last week against Chambersburg. I believe we mentioned it, but I wanted to make sure we shout him out again for that great write-up for EasternPAFootball.com. If you're not following Andy on social media or reading his stuff on EasternPAFootball.com, you're doing yourself a disservice. So definitely follow Andy on Twitter. He's at Andy Brackets, and visit EasternPAFootball.com for his stuff. It's very, very good.
Yeah, on a quick side note, I think he had a good time at his Wyomissing game on Saturday, too. He went to the Wyomissing game and was covering that. And it's interesting just because Anvil is a school he covers a lot for basketball, so he's in tune with that school, and I'm sure he had a great write-up for that one too. I didn't get around to reading it yet, but that'll probably get done sometime this week before their next game. So.
Yeah. And I do want to mention, this is not necessarily Bulldog Hour specific, but I want to thank once again Weichel Realty for paying the media rights fee for the game against Chambersburg last Friday. And then this past Friday night, and an anonymous donor via the parents organization and the Tradition Club, we kind of came together, worked that out, that someone stepped up and paid for it. They didn't want any recognition, so I'm not going to say who it was, but I want to thank them and the help from the Parents Oregon Tradition Club to enable us to do things like the live stream, any kind of behind the scenes cooperation. It doesn't always, almost rarely ever involves money other than the District 3 playoff games. But the school district was also a huge help this year. We got 5 of the 7 home games were done by Wilson Media Productions. Well, I shouldn't say it like that. 6 of the 7 were done by Wilson Media Productions. It's just the first one wasn't on Facebook.
Right.
Wilson Media Productions does an amazing job. The 3 camera pro setup, they got their own dedicated truck. It's great. They weren't able to be with us Friday night because they were setting up for the Veterans Appreciation event, which was another huge success, another great event. The dance,
awesome event.
Yesterday, I believe.
Yes.
And 18th year, so very good stuff. I know
they pack them in every year.
I know Kevin Folk was a big player in that in years past. I know he's helping set up again this year. He just started working for us. So,
nice.
The veteran stuff.
Former polo player,
right? So appreciate everyone at the school and at the booster clubs that have helped expand the coverage from where it was just a few years ago. It's great to have people from out of town be able to watch the game, see pictures, hear commentary, and all that stuff. So we appreciate all that behind the scenes help. And how to help the show here: sponsorships and advertising, in-kind donations, visiting the website bulldoghour.com, and spreading the word.
Yeah, you got to like and share. I just saw a thing yesterday that talked about like and share and how that one of the best ways to help spread stuff on social media. So there you go.
We're not just saying it because Justin likes to say it. It actually does help. And like I mentioned, we're going to have another live show probably in about 3.5 months or so. It's when we did it last year. I think it worked out well. We actually, did an hour of Bulldog football at the end of February.
Yeah.
But, there's always stuff coming out.
I feel like it felt really good for us to do that, though, because we were in a spot where, you're kind of going through football withdrawal at that point. It's been a few weeks since there's been football.
Yeah.
And that's a tough time for everybody.
Oh yeah, it's a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, and you don't know what to do. But
after the Super Bowl, before like NHL or NBA playoffs start, before March Madness.
Yeah, it's kind of a lull.
Yeah,
and we want to inject some Wilson football into the discussion, and we will be doing that. That's the plan. The date may shift a week or two, plus or minus, but that is the plan. Sunday, February 23rd, and we will have the 2020 schedule. I would think would be ironed out by then. If you're hoping to hear about the 2020 schedule tonight, I hate to disappoint you, but I don't have it for you, not because they wouldn't give it to me, because it's literally not done. We are still missing an opponent for week 4, and the LL League hasn't told us when we're playing the LL opponents because of their realignment from 3 sections to 4 sections. So that's not done yet. I anticipate the majority of it to be done before the holidays because that's when the new classifications come out in early December. They just put the guidance out, but they did not release where everyone will be because the schools are only now going through where they set and they can choose to play up or not, which is the case for Berks Catholic. They're going to be classified 3A, but they anticipate, it sounded like, to request to play up in 4A, which is where they have been for the last couple cycles. I think the last 2 cycles. Which
would be interesting. I feel like that on their side, I feel like that's something probably out of necessity because they have a tough time filling their schedule as well. And I imagine that would only be tougher.
Dropping to 3A, I think, would eliminate any chance of a 6A team playing them like Central Dauphin.
Right. Central Dauphin would probably
say thanks but no thanks.
Yeah, sorry, we can't.
I mean, look how much power ratings matter this year for playoff stuff.
Yeah.
You would take an entire point, and honestly, 1 away.
You look in District 3, like outside of District 3, people probably may miss that. You know what I mean? Like that may not be on people's radars. And honestly, in other districts, it may not matter that much. In District 1, 16 teams make it, and State College and West, there's 12 6A teams. So it's not really that big of a deal out there. But when you look at in District 3, I feel like in 5, where it can be really competitive and come down to really close, and in 6, you're not going to have schools
lining up to
willingly look to risk unnecessarily losing quality points like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a smart move on their part, and they've shown they can obviously compete at an extremely high level in that 4A bracket. So there's no real need.
Yeah, they're still playing. So,
right.
The 4A is a good home for them, and that's where it seems they'll be sticking. Just one last time on a somber note, we talked about it throughout the offseason and the beginning of this year, but we do want to memorialize Greg Barnett here at the end of the season and say the 2019 season was dedicated in his memory. We unfortunately lost Greg suddenly on May 20th, 2019, and he was deeply missed this past season, and I'm sure the coaches and players were thinking about him often during the last 12 game weeks and previously, and will continue to do so for the years to come. All right, last time, Justin. Last chance. You're not going to see this again.
I know. It's crazy. We were halfway through column 3.
We're halfway through column 3,
and unfortunately, that's about as far as we're going to get.
We're not.
The show will go on. Just our participation is we kind of bowed out here, but valiant effort, and we've talked about this a number of times. But I believe, and I may be off on the math now, but I believe that Coach Dom sits at 154 wins. I could be off by 1 or so there, but essentially he's averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 wins a season in a sport where you get 10
You're only guaranteed essentially 10 games
a year. And that's pretty amazing. And it speaks to lots of things. And every time we talk to him about just success in general, he throws it right away to he's worked with great coaches, he's worked with great kids. I know that would be his answer the next time. Well, I know it will be the answer the next time we bring something like that up with him. But it does speak to the program that playing into late November, early December is kind of the norm, and that's awesome. And you hope that never gets overlooked as to what that actually means. That success, isn't taken for granted. We were talking a couple weeks ago when we were talking with our buddy Andy about how a number of big programs and big schools like Manheim Central, like Wilson, and some of these other schools don't play in true basketball tip-off tournaments anymore because they were so used to not having guys early in the season. So now as that goes on, who knows what that'll look like, but it's just one of those things where it's, it becomes the expectation, but you hope it's not taken for granted because it is something special, and it's a pretty awesome feat to be playing into mid-November every year.
Oh, absolutely. And the District 3 6A final will be this Friday, November 15th. It will be at Central Dauphin as they upset Manheim Township in double overtime, 35-34. They took advantage of a missed extra point by the Blue Streaks. The Rams' kick was true, and they are facing Harrisburg in a rematch, which I'm sure the Cougars are anticipating very much so.
I am. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. It's a rematch of last year's district final.
At the same place.
And it's also, I know we touched on this during the year, but Harrisburg lost to Central Dauphin, but should have had an attempt from the 2-yard line. Scoreboard malfunctioned, not timer, error. I mean, actual scoreboard malfunction. It turned off. And there should have been, how much time is, debatable. People have I've seen different things there, but certainly time for at least one play. Maybe 2 quick ones, depending on whose clock, you were kind of going by, but easily time for one play. The refs just basically were like, nope, scoreboard malfunction, game over. and that was it. Like everybody just kind of like standing around.
Yeah.
Now that game happened at Harrisburg, so just
on a Saturday at Severance. Yeah.
Right. So it was not.
This is a Friday at Speed Ebersol.
Right. This was just really poor timing. It wasn't anything more than that. But yeah, Harrisburg feels like they got cheated out of a chance to win that game. And honestly, you can argue that they did get cheated out of a chance to win that game.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the fault of Central Dauphin, or anything like that. But yeah, it should be an interesting game, because I'm sure Central Dauphin's tired of hearing about like, oh, the only reason you won is because of the scoreboard, like.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they'll be pumped to go.
Yeah,
and this is two teams that are playing incredibly well. Central Dauphin has won 9 in a row after starting 1-2. They're now 10-2 and playing in the district championship game again this year. And Harrisburg, they struggled a little bit in the middle of the year when there were a few injuries.
Well, if you go back, and this is kind of just taking a step back for a second, but you look from the preseason, right? Everybody kind of said there's 4 teams that kind of are that have separated themselves in. To a lot of people, they anticipate them separating themselves in 6A District 3, and it was the top 4 seeds: Wilson and Township and Harrisburg and CD, and that played itself out on Friday night in the 2 games.
Yep.
Both games were decided on the last play.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how that works out. Yeah, obviously I would have liked it to work out a little differently, but people were dead on when they called it months ago.
I talked to the Saturday after Wilson lost to Manheim Township and Central Dauphin was helped to get the win versus Harrisburg. I talked to the Central Dauphin radio broadcaster Eric Thomas, and he said immediately when we talked, it's like those are the 4, meaning those 4 teams that made it to the Final Four, 4 best teams. They'll meet in the Final Four, and they'll be incredible games. And obviously, a bunch of people jumped on that as after last Saturday's games when everything was said and done. And top 4 teams are all advancing. They're all playing each other. It's probably going to be a good week. And for better or worse, it was. Obviously, we came out on the wrong side of it. But
Eric's in an interesting position there, too, because Central Dauphin plays Township and Wilson in their non-league schedule. So he sees CD every week. He saw Township, he saw Wilson, and he saw Harrisburg.
Right.
He was of us. He was the one who had seen all of them. So, yeah, he nailed that early. So
yeah, this was back at the end of September. So we're full like 6 weeks later, and here we are. So, so that's that. Let's get to the actual game itself now, and let's watch the game recap from Huddle and see what highlights they pull this week. I don't know if I'm going to dive into the Wilson game film and pull any out. I have not seen this game recap yet, so let's take a look and see what Huddle produces for us this time. Maybe it won't freeze. Wouldn't that be a miracle?
I'm not going to bet on it.
No, I'm not going to bet on it. So, so the game started out. Wilson had the ball and turned it over on their first series. However, it didn't matter as both defenses kept feeling each other out. It would go to the end of the first would be 0-0. But then the second quarter happened.
Yes.
And it was amazing how much changed and how quickly things changed.
That was a 4th down play there too.
That was a huge play. Now here we're in the second quarter. It's 7-7. Wilson would score to go up 7-0. Harrisburg
was a 4th down.
Harrisburg would immediately answer to tie it 7-7. Wilson would continue to drive down the field. It was done mostly all night on the running of Avante Lockhart, although here you're going to see, or you're not going to see it apparently, Mason Leonard dove in to give Wilson a 14-7 lead. I don't ignore the score at the top because that was wrong. It was never 33-14. I'm not really sure where that came from. 40-22. Okay, so yeah, completely ignore the score at the top. Huddle is completely wrong. But this is a nice play this is near the end of the game, I believe. This is going to maybe take the. Was this when they went to take the lead? Huddle, they're not doing so
no,
good
I think
here.
this is the last drive.
So here's the last drive.
Yeah, this is the last drive.
All right. So at this point, it's 33 to 20. No, excuse me. That's not right. 30. Well, now, wow. Now I can't even remember. That was not the final score, though. That is incorrect. Yeah, I'm going to have to pull out other highlights because that was terrible. That was an awful recap huddle. I'm not really sure what. Did they show any of the touchdowns?
I don't know.
That was terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
but
we'll go into the film and pull them out.
The first quarter was just kind of both teams kind of going back and forth, and I don't want to say not a whole lot happened but it kind of went by fairly quickly, but then early in the second, things got rolling, and they kind of went both ways. Teams got going, and kind of back and forth, but Wilson would kind of grind some things out, get things going, and then score, and then Harrisburg would answer with a big play, and it only took them a couple plays, number of times. So when they were able to do that, it ended up just kind of not getting to, there was no separation, I should say, because Wilson would drive down the field, but then they wouldn't
Harrisburg
be able to
answer back.
Right, Harrisburg had an answer every time.
Yeah, so Huddle or someone in there added a touchdown to the wrong team because the final score was 33-29 favor Harrisburg, not 40-22. Here is Wilson's first touchdown as they went into the actual game film to pull this up. So here we're going to see Wilson score the first touchdown of the game. This is in the second quarter, and I believe it's Avanti going up the middle to put the Bulldogs up 7-0. And we'll see if I can. This is the kick, but we're not going to watch that. It was made successfully by Jack Wagner. Unfortunately, just I believe 5 plays later, Harrisburg is going to answer. They methodically drove down the field, and they would get the touchdown to tie it up on this play here. So both offenses really started going after the first quarter. After they kind of figured out the strengths and weaknesses of the opposing unit, things drastically changed, and each team was able to score bunches 3 times apiece in the second quarter.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy because the first quarter ended 0-0, and then
right,
except for a missed extra point by Harrisburg on their third touchdown, it would have been, there were 3 scores apiece, and it was 21-20 Wilson at half.
So Wilson would put together a really nice drive to take the lead again on that touchdown run by Avanti Lockhart. Wilson would go up 14-7 after the successfully made extra point. But that would last even less time than it did on, wrong button. Than the previous Wilson lead. Harrisburg would score on their next offensive play after the kickoff,
which was
you're going to see it here.
The next play.
And, Dante Kent's not someone that you can leave much space, and there was a lot of space for him there to make a play. And he scores the 80-yard touchdown to tie the game 14-14. Bulldogs get the ball back, and they are able to score within 5 plays again. Again, remember, this is still the second quarter. And just really, really great second quarter by the Wilson offense. Just a nice little swing pass there.
Yeah,
Avanti
great run by Avanti.
Ran over, 3 Harrisburg defenders?
Yeah.
All converged for the tackle. Couldn't bring him down. Jack Wagner kicks the extra point. And the Bulldogs are in business, up 21-14. There's only about there's about 3 minutes left in the first half at this point.
Yeah.
And Harrisburg on their offensive possession, play number 5 would get another touchdown to their name as we approach halftime. And this would put them, would attempt to tie the game. It'd be 21-20, but as Justin mentioned, they're going to miss this extra point here, which would allow Wilson to eventually go into halftime.
I think we block it, don't we?
Right. Yeah, it is blocked. I believe it's Adam Venino who busts through and gets a hand on it, I think, right there. I think that was Adam. Yeah. 63. So Adam Venino blocked the extra point, and halftime 21-20. So now into the third quarter, there's no immediate scores by either team, but Harrisburg would eventually get the go-ahead touchdown. The defense made them work for it. I believe it took like 12 plays or so, but Harrisburg would eventually get in right here on the rushing touchdown, and they would take their first lead of the game. They would kick. No, I'm sorry. They would. No, they take a timeout and they go for two, right? Because I remember saying to them, I was like, "That's where they take a timeout early in the second half."
I'm not sure they had all their guys on the field either. Like it was weird. They were always struggling to get enough guys on for their kicks.
But they're going to go for two here, and it's going to be called incomplete, or I think he calls him down.
I think he calls him down. So I think he catches it, but he was down with the ball short. Now, I say that. I think that's what he called. We obviously don't get an explanation for that here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know how he saw that from where he was.
Yeah, I don't really know either.
I think he caught it, and I do think he was down before he crossed.
It's really hard to tell.
But it's really hard to tell, and I don't know how he would see that from where he is. But whatever. I'm good with it.
Yeah, it's over now. It doesn't matter. But so Wilson's down 26-21, but they would get the ball back and would score, and it would be Avanti again here on that nice swing pass play. He would run over a few people, get into the end zone. They would take the lead 27-26, and then try to make it a field goal differential. Wilson would go for two, and we're going to see, it's going to be Avanti again here to put Wilson up 29. Okay. I don't remember that.
It was offsides.
So it moved even closer. Yeah. That's right. Here is where we're going to see Avanti do the successful 2-point conversion, which will put Wilson up 29-26. I believe this is with 4 to 5 minutes to play.
Yeah.
A little bit longer, 6:52. So there's 7 minutes left. So that's obviously a lot of time left on the clock, but Wilson would have the lead. They would definitely make Harrisburg work for it, as it took 9 plays for Harrisburg to score. Unfortunately, they would score, which is a big negative, obviously. But they're really, he's kind of their goal line type back. He's the one that did the most damage against us.
He's the one that found success against us.
They would kick the extra point here, and this would put them up 33-29 with, I think, 2:45 remaining. I believe was the time that we got the football, and it wouldn't be the last time we get the football. As on the third play, the ball gets deflected and is intercepted, and at this point, people are thinking, okay, the game's probably over. Wilson's done. Game over, just turn the ball over. Thankfully for Wilson, we had all 3 timeouts.
I did see some people on social media. I felt this was like a positive thing. So I bring it up. Someone was calling out people who left. It's like, we had all 3 timeouts. It was Rob Walters, who I saw. If you know Rob, he has no problem telling anybody what he thinks. So he's like, we had 3 timeouts. Can't believe people were leaving, and they missed a heck of an ending, and they absolutely did. So
now Wilson would stop Harrisburg on 3 consecutive plays, taking a timeout after each of them. They only gained 5 yards, 3 runs with the bruising back. Tymeek Evans, I can't remember his full name, but he was a bruiser. He did a lot of a lot of damage against Wilson in the second half.
No hesitation in his run.
No, he just plowed right ahead. Wilson stopped him when needed to. And Wilson get the ball back. Believe it was a fair catch on the punt return. And after an incompletion, Wilson picks up 21 yards. They pick up 14 yards, a couple more incompletions, but then 2 consecutive first downs on 12 and 11-yard completions. Now you're getting down into it. Now you're inside the 15. You're on the 12-yard line, and we're just going to play these rapid fire here. So let me pull it up. And at this point, there's, I think, 22 seconds to play. And Wilson's going to get a few plays. They try to catch him off guard with a 1-yard run here, which is stopped. The Bulldogs are going to immediately run up to the line and spike the ball, which you're going to see right here. And there are 7 seconds to go. Wilson dials up a attempt at a trick play, which unfortunately, due to pressure, does not become successful. They handed it off to Troy, who tried to get it to Caleb. I'm not sure he would have gotten too far, even if it was complete.
No, but it would have been interesting if we could have given the time there just to
there's the obvious pass interference, which is going to give Wilson an untimed play here at the end of the game. So there is no time left on the clock. The pass to Fry there, that was incomplete because the guy was tackling him before the ball got there.
Which you see this a lot in higher level games, but they talk about and I don't know that was the guy's thought process. It's a smart penalty if you're beat.
Yeah,
it's a smart, if you're beat, you're gonna lose on that play. Now, I don't know that that's what he's thinking. I think he's just, you see ball, you try to make the play, and he got there early.
But, I mean, you can see Fry being tackled before the ball.
Absolutely.
It was an obvious penalty.
Absolutely.
Everyone was screaming for it, but the ref was reaching for it before people were even saying it. So they absolutely knew that it was a penalty. So half the distance because of pass interference, that takes Wilson from the 12, 11-yard line down to the 6. One play. And this is how the game and the season ended. Just a incomplete pass into the end zone, and that was it for the game. And the final score would be Harrisburg 33, Wilson 29. So tough way to go down, but I think over the last 2 weeks, especially, the resiliency and the fight from the players and the coaches to not ever feel deflated or down or out, obviously was on display. And it's something that not every team is capable of. So it's definitely was nice to see that they could have easily given up after the interception at midfield. It's a deflection, it's one of those fluky plays.
After the guy who we said was running well in the second half, for Harrisburg, I don't know that it would have surprised anyone if they could run for 10 yards,
Right. Oh, that's all they needed. They needed one first down.
And let's be honest. So we saw their punting or struggles punting pregame. So we knew, if you think about it, if they're in a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, they may be handing it to that kid again. I know they're at midfield, and I know that's dangerous, and maybe they just take their chances with it.
I think when they got stuffed on the first play, got 5 on the next, but stuffed on the third, I think you start to think, they're
absolutely.
I'm honestly,
but I'm saying, if they get 4 on first, and then they get 3 on second, and then they get 1 on third. Now, if they're if it's close, I don't know that they don't go for it.
Were you surprised that they didn't try a quarterback run at all, though? They tried to pound it with
a little bit,
big
especially or even like a screen style pass, because they were able to provide enough protection to let a lot of times when we were getting pressure, it was only coming from one spot. And I don't mean the same. I just mean they were able to hold up, their line was able to hold up pretty well to provide enough of a chance so that their quarterback always saw where the pressure was coming from. I guess that's the best way to put it. We didn't have a lot of surprise pressure on the quarterback. And so he was able to kind of run and make plays with his arm, or get, just buy time and then make the play, or was able to run. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't try anything like that, except the way they're running. I think they thought they could run for the first down, and if at worst, make us use all our timeouts. And they got, at worst, they made us use our timeouts. So, but when I look at it, yes, the timeouts would have been nice. You lose the one for the spike, but you also got the one for the penalty. So,
Right.
You had your 4 plays. It just it's a game of inches, right? It's a game of inches, and it's tough. And, you look back, we had some things go our way, especially early in maybe that first game of the season. We had some breaks go our way.
Yeah.
The Central Dauphin guy getting tripped up, but we also got to stop at the 1 inch line, later in that game. So we've been on the positive side of the inches this year, and just a couple things didn't go our way in this game. And it's tough. And it's tough because it comes to a sudden end, Yeah,
sudden victory right there. I mean, that's as close as you're going to get in football. I mean, you can do it obviously when there's overtime, but for it to not go into overtime, you can't really like that. That's
when was the last time? When was the last time there was an untimed down in a Wilson football? I don't mean it more rhetorically, but you don't see that a lot. You really don't see that a lot in high school. I mean, I'm not counting overtime. All those downs are untimed, but you don't see a lot of untimed downs. Because there aren't all that many 1 possession games, so it's not really going to matter a lot of the times, So
yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Statistic wise, for a score that was only separated by 4, it's going to be relatively even. Though Wilson did gain more first downs than Harrisburg, 21-15. They rushed for similar yardage. Wilson on more attempts. 154 yards on 41 for the Bulldogs, 164 yards on 31 carries from the Cougars. Passing yards, though, the Cougars were able to throw for 304 yards. Bulldogs just a shade under 200 at 196. So total offense, 48 for 468 yards from Harrisburg, 66 for 350 from the Bulldogs. Penalties, not too many penalties that really stuck out, but Harrisburg got called on that one at the end of the game that really could have mattered.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only one that really stands out. Time of possession wasn't off all that much, pretty even throughout. Wilson was 7 of 14 on third down. That's pretty good. Unfortunately, Harrisburg was 5 of 9, so they got above 50% on that. But Wilson did convert, and you mentioned this when we were watching the huddle highlights, that Wilson was 2 of 2 on fourth down, which led to touchdowns, I believe, on each drive.
Yeah.
So absolutely huge and incredibly gutsy, and the correct call, and making the right play call in each instance. Harrisburg was 2 for 2 in the red zone, Wilson 3 of 4, and obviously the only one they missed was on that last play of the game.
I would have taken 3 successful ones yesterday for Penn State.
No, let's not go there.
Just twisting that knife.
Yeah, let's avoid that.
Glutton for punishment.
Individually speaking, leading rusher was Avanti Lockhart. He carried it 15 times for 55 yards and 1 touchdown.
Man, hard-earned yards.
Yeah, hard-earned yards
year.
for sure. Mason Leonard had 12 carries for 53 yards and a score. Caleb Brown 13 times for 35 yards. And passing, Caleb was 13 of 23 for 196 yards and 2 touchdowns. Receiving, Avanti was the leading receiver. He had 6 for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. Troy Corson next, 3 for 31. And then Doug Weller, Nate Hoekstra, Matt Fry, and Mason Leonard all hauled in 1 reception. Defensively speaking, 2 names are right at the top. Anthony Coper led the way with 9 tackles. He was all over the field once again. He had a half tackle for a loss and 1 pass breakup, which was big at the beginning of the game. And Avanti was the next leading tackler for Wilson at 6 tackles, followed by Nate Hoekstra at 5.5. 1.5 of those were for loss. And Alfred Horn, who was a monster on special teams.
Yeah, he was flying down the field.
Flying down the field and making plays against the incredibly potent and athletic Harrisburg returners, and he was there every time. That was one phase of the game that didn't really impact really either team negatively, was special teams other than the blocked extra point.
Right, yeah.
So, but a return game didn't really I mean, Wilson had a few that set them up nicely, but nothing got past like the 40, their own 40. Like I think everything was kept in the 40 on their side. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
they weren't kicking real deep, so it was kind of weird,
Yeah.
But yeah, Jack was putting them in the end zone, and then when they were short, we made good tackles because he not like a line drive kick. He's booming them. So
Right. So before we do the entire season recap, let's finish up here with the Harrisburg game and talk about our player of the game, which after the last few weeks probably should be no surprise. That once again is going to be Avanti Lockhart. And if you count the night that we chose all the seniors, I believe he's our player of the game 4 weeks in a row. And he just really took over at times, and he's obviously not the only positive out of the last month of the season or the entire 3 months of the season, but he really exploded statistically speaking over the last few weeks. And again, he was a huge reason for the close and tough game against Harrisburg on Friday night.
And one of the things too was he was a big contributor on both sides of the football in so many games like that. It was impressive to see because, like we said, there were lots of ways that lots of guys were contributing and have big contributions. But man, Avanti had some tough running yards this year. Like he was not given much easy. He's running into some stout defensive lines and defensive fronts, and still just churning out those yards. And yet, then he'd go on the defensive side and be making a big play there. So that's huge all year.
All year. That would be why I don't have a graphic for it, but that's also why he's our player of the year.
Hey, well, there we go.
Avanti Lockhart. So, I don't have a separate graphic for it, but I think you can pretty much figure out, as we've talked about him a lot over the last 4 or 5 weeks, but Avanti Lockhart is our Bulldog Hour player of the game for Game 12 against Harrisburg, and also our player of the year for 2019. All right. Couple notes here on statistics. Let's look over just a few before we quickly preview 2020. Obviously, the team went 10-2, getting to double digits wins for the first time since 2016. Just the 2 losses Friday night at home against Harrisburg, and then at the end of September to Manheim Township. And it was a very successful, very strong season for the Bulldogs statistically. Avanti led the way rushing with 939 yards and 19 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Caleb Brown was next with 770 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, followed by Mason Leonard at 759 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. Caleb was obviously the leading passer as well. He threw 173 times, completing 107 of them for 1,430 yards and 23 touchdown passes. The leading receiver on the year was Troy Corson with 28 receptions for 298 yards and 4 scores. Avanti next with 24 for 292 and 5, followed by Matt Fry with 18 for 197 and 3 scores. And Brady Gibble, 17 catches, 474 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And last, defensively, if I can find it here, Avanti led the way with 52.5 total tackles. He had 9.5 for loss, 4 sacks, an interception, and a fumble recovery. Anthony Coper next, the two-way starter, had a huge year this year on the offensive line, and at his linebacker spot, he had 49.5 tackles, 6.5 for loss, 1.5 sacks, a pass breakup, and a fumble recovery. Nate Hoekstra was next, 41.5 total tackles, 6.5 for loss, 1.5 sacks for him, plus a pass breakup. Those were your top 3 performers, all with 40-plus total tackles for the year. Couple standouts. Interception-wise, the leader was, I believe, Mason Leonard with 2. Sacks, it was Ethan Capitano with 6.5. I mentioned Avanti had 4. Up next would have been Adrian Santana at 3.5. So, anything to say statistically speaking for the season?
No, it was good to see. That there was Well, there were guys that like stood out. Like there was a lot of like it was a team effort, and we kind of saw that all year. There wasn't. Yeah, we talked about Avanti, kind of setting the tone, with his rushing and the tackles there. But like it's just they got key contributions from lots of guys, and that's at the beginning of the year we kind of knew that's what was going to be needed, and the guy stepped up, and had a heck of a year. It was fun to watch the group kind of come together. So
yeah, for sure.
Yep. and kind of leave it all out there. Obviously didn't end the way they wanted to, but I don't think anybody has any regrets in that regard. Like they put it out there every night.
Yeah,
so.
They left it all on the field. Incredible senior class, a lot of talent, a lot of fun players. Hopefully a lot of them.
And a lot of guys that have contributed for a lot of years.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. We saw a lot of these guys last year, a few of them even 2 years ago, and some of them
even more.
even for 4 years.
Yeah.
So, it's a great class. Really did a lot for the program. It's fun to see them play up. A lot of them posting pictures from playing through Lincoln Park, Van Reed, Southern, West, like all the way through. And that's why the Wilson program is as consistent as it is, because you get these players that just grow up in the system and they go and watch the games and they become part of the games, and it's deep ties and deep roots, and that's what breeds the success.
That's what it takes.
Yeah, and
it's not easy.
Yeah, it was great coaching a bunch of these players and then watching all of them for the last 2, 3, 4 years culminate in this way with a really, really strong season in 2019. All right. Well, before we go, we do want to just touch on 2020, as we do at the end of every season. We look forward to the next, just to kind of whet the appetite and remind everyone what to look out for next season. So our little look ahead here is just focused on our returning players, the starters and contributors we saw this past year. And this is not exhaustive. It doesn't include everyone. I had limited space, but I started to run out of space. So I was like, I'm just going to go with this. I'll mention a few other people. So good news on offense, quarterback and a couple running backs. We lose Avanti, but Mason is back, as is Jaden. So that should be a nice two-pronged attack there.
When you were going through the stats, Caleb and Mason bring over 1,500 rushing yards right there.
Yeah,
is returning.
So there's
bringing back 1,500 rushing yards. That doesn't even count Jaden, who looked really strong in his attempts this year.
Right.
Oh, and that's still not counting our top rusher. So tell you how successful the rushing attack was this year.
Yeah, it was really strong. It shouldn't miss a beat next year. With wide receiver Troy Corson coming back as well, you also have one of the pass catchers returning. But that's it on offense. Yeah, so there's got to be some guys that step up. Obviously, Chase Walters was kind of like the sixth offensive lineman. He saw a lot of playing time.
He even changed jerseys based on numbers.
So. Kind of like a hybrid tight end, sixth tackle, third tackle, sixth offensive lineman. He obviously have every chance to probably man one of the tackle positions next year, I would think. A tackle or tight end, depending on what they want to do with him. I would think tackle. Same thing with Matt Schrufer. We saw him often this year, especially at the beginning of the year. He'll be coming back, and I would expect him to nail down one of the offensive line positions. But the rest up for grabs. We'll see if any 2B seniors can grab any more of those spots, or if it's going to be an underclassman that steps up. Yeah. So a lot of work to do in the trenches on offense. A little less to have to worry about on defense. You got Jeff Colson back for his fourth year with the team, and he's played a lot of games at the position, and he will be probably a preseason pick to be one of the better defensemen in Berks County and the Lancaster-Lebanon League. And then your speedy defensive ends in Ethan Capitano and Adrian Santana. Right there is, I believe, 10 plus sacks coming back. Yeah. They are your pass rushing specialists and could see more time next year in that defense. And then Jaden Jones stepped up at outside linebacker after the unfortunate injury to AJ Futrick halfway through the year, so he'll be back with a lot of experience. We didn't see too much of Jack Wagner during the season at linebacker due to his special teams duty as the kicker, but I would expect him to have a chance to be one of the inside linebackers next year. And then obviously Mason Leonard and Troy Corson will be manning their defensive back spots next year as well, or you'd expect them to be there,
right?
Unless things shuffle. But Troy's been already a 3-year starter at safety, and Mason filled in and played the entire year at one of the cornerback spots. Not mentioned there, obviously, quarterback Caleb Brown. We saw him often in defensive secondary, and should they need him there, I'm sure he'd be more than willing to go back to the spot that he started at as a sophomore last year. Special teams wise, they actually have pretty much everyone back. I mentioned Jack Wagner. He's been handling kickoffs and the kicking the last 2 years. Troy's his holder. He's back. Caleb's the punter. He's back. Chase Walters was the backup long snapper. Actually, I think the third long snapper behind AJ and then Brady. But he was warming up if needed, and he is returning, already having practiced the position, and then both the kick and punt returners and Troy and Mason back as well. So special teams have a lot coming back. They find the blockers in front of them and should be okay there. Just have to find a couple linebackers on defense, another defensive tackle, and then the big thing is on offense, finding more pass catchers and the entire offensive line, which is not something I want to gloss over.
No,
but
especially because, as we mentioned before, a number of those offensive linemen have started a lot of games.
Nate Keller was a 3+ year starter. He played. Right. He was, I believe, it was the first ever
when we
offensive lineman starter as a freshman.
I think I said this to you. I think I said it off the air a couple of shows ago that has Nate Keller started more games at offensive line than anyone in Wilson history? Now, that might be distorted because early on, I don't know. You know what I mean? Well,
because of the playoffs, I would say probably.
Right.
I don't see any other way around it. That's probably true.
Because there have been people who started as ninth graders. It's rare.
Not on offensive line.
But not at offensive line. That's arguably the toughest to play as a night.
Think about the transition from high school to college. Everyone's always like, well, they'll redshirt because there's so much strength you have to build.
Right. Lineman, it's hard for that to translate.
It's not much different from middle school, freshman team to high school, but he was doing it as a pinch hitter, basically as a sixth lineman as a freshman.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, John Ventura was a 2+ year starter. Anthony Coper, 2-year starter. Adam Venino, basically a full 3-year starter.
Yeah.
Like that, you're losing a lot of experience on the offensive line, a lot of size and strength.
Right. So the size and strength is tough to replace. You hope that you can find guys that are big and strong. And work to get stronger. The size, there's only so much you can do about, but the strength, that you have to work for that. But the experience, that's something. There's only one way to gain that, and that's to play. So it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for some guys next year. But hey, there are plenty. There's a number of guys coming back, and they're going to have to kind of lead the way. And we talk about it every year. Guys need to step up. And I'm confident people will.
That the senior class needs to step up, and some underclassmen need to, get in the weight room, understand the playbook, get ready to go.
Because
there's spots up for grabs.
Right, you want your shot, you got to earn it.
This is the perfect time to do it.
Right. It might have been tough coming in this year because there's guys that have an edge because of that experience. However, you want a spot, you got to earn it now, and that work is really only a little bit away. That doesn't start in August.
No, you want to earn that spot. You want to step up and be the senior starter or an underclassman starter. You're going to earn that January through May. Don't expect to just come in and get it handed to you from June to August. Right. So, all right. So that wraps up the show for the most part. Just a couple things to say before we go. Just a reminder that last year I started this journey called My Wilson Football Story. I did a 2.5-hour broadcast with Chad Henne that I had sat down and talked about his entire career at Wilson, filled with highlights. That was, believe it or not, last March.
This is an awesome interview. We've done a few with him
Yeah.
now. This was a special one, special topic, but he's a heck of an interview. If you didn't catch that, you should go back and watch it.
Yeah, it's available.
Incredible.
And my next one, and I already talked to him about it. I mentioned it on the show before, but I'll mention it again. It's going to be John Doc Moyer, who's got 40 plus years with Wilson football and Wilson School District in general. I know he's looking forward to sit down and talk with me. And now that football season is wrapped up, hopefully that will happen soon.
So, again, the stories Doc has. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Unbelievable.
And if you have if you or someone you know would be an interesting person to interview, I have a short list of people that I've asked to be interviewed. I'm going to get to them. I would like to do more than one a year, which is like the pace I'm at right now. Hopefully I can get Doc done before March.
Send that bar low.
Yeah. Hey, the Chad Henne one took me forever.
I know
forever. That one took a long time. But yeah, so Doc will be next, and we're very much looking forward to that one. And just one programming note for us. If you can't get enough of us and you just really enjoy hearing us talk about sports and you want to hear us talk about things other than the Wilson football team and Pennsylvania high school football, this actually really started as a pro sports show, not this show, but like us doing a podcast and radio show called the Joe Mays and J-Rap Show. And we started that, if you can believe this, nearly 9 years ago.
Someone asked me just yesterday, and I was like, I don't know how long it's been.
February 2011.
They're like, has it been like 5 years? I'm like, a lot more than that. Yes. I knew it was a lot more than that, but I didn't know how exactly.
February 2011 we started, just about a little over 2.5 years later, we celebrated our 100th episode with Chad Henne as our guest.
Most of the things that we do together start, it was, hey, I have an idea.
Yeah.
Do you want to? And yes.
Yeah. And Bulldog Hour just kind of spun off of that because Justin and I were already spending so much time talking about Wilson football and being at Wilson football that it kind of made sense.
All we really did was start adding video to it.
Right.
And like recording our conversations. Like these are the conversations we have on our drives to and from away games and anytime we see each other.
Maybe other people would enjoy listening to it. So if you can apply that knowledge and that to anything else like college football or NFL, because that's pretty much all we talk about. We throw in a little hockey and basketball here and there.
At times of the year we'll
March
venture
Madness,
into other
obviously,
things.
And we'll do some fun like pop culture and entertainment stuff from time to time. But most of the time, it's talking about NFL and college football. You can find us at jmnjrradio.com or joemaysandjrap.com, and we will be starting that up next Sunday already.
Occasionally, we'll talk about how Dark Knight is your favorite movie of all
we will
time.
not talk about it. We will not talk about that as not where we're going with this conversation. So if you would like to hear us more outside of Wilson, check out our regular show. But I think that about does it. So any last words for season 5 of the Bulldog Hour?
It was a lot of fun this year. We got to do a lot of shows. So like we had a lot of fun. But honestly, what makes it fun, you mentioned it just a couple seconds ago. We enjoy going to the games. We enjoy talking about the games. We enjoy when people want to talk to us about the games. Thanks to the players who gave us time after the games for interviews. Thanks to the coaches who let us do this. And they if they do mind that we're there, they never voice that to us. So that's always nice of them.
Right, yeah.
But we're just there like. They expect us there now, like that. It's one of those things. It's just a lot of fun, and it was fun to see this team. Like I said, it was fun to see this team kind of come together as a team, and a team effort accomplished a lot this year. So it was a lot of fun, and definitely one of those years that we'll remember for a little while. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great year. I kind of mentioned already, and just talking about the senior class was a lot of fun. They were fun to coach years ago. They're fun to watch get better over the years, and you kind of see it building last year as things didn't quite go the way they had wanted to, and then the seniors were like, "Hey, we got a lot coming back. We want to make big things happen," and they ran into a couple buzzsaws during the regular season and playoffs, and sometimes that happens, and But
Right.
I mean, can't take anything away from them. They fought to the end. It was a great group of young men. It was a lot of fun to watch them play, and another hugely successful season in West Lawn. And yeah, just thanks for joining us again. 19 episodes this year, and it was a lot of fun. And you know, we're gonna take a little downtime from Wilson football, but we'll be back and better than ever. And
Don't doubt it.
February for 2020. And like we said, every year we want to try to get bigger and better, and that'll be the goal. So we'll see what we can bring forward into the new decade. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, 2020, here we come. So, all right, for the last time this year, thank you so much for joining us for the last 9 months. Last 9 months that we've been doing this, and especially the last 3 months. We appreciate all the support. And if you like the show, continue to check bulldoghour.com for more, and hear me and Justin talk about other things on the Joe Mays and JRAF show. So for the Wilson football program, I'm Joe Mays. He's Justin Raffoff. And until next time, remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.